day 9 of the unofficial month of Super Sentai that I'm doing, and the 24th season in the year 2000, Mirai Sentai, Timeranger. I didn't need to back up to that one. So right into things I liked and the things that threw me off. Tatsuya and Yuri, or Time Red and Time Pink. It's cute. I ship it. But also Domon and Honami. That's also cute. And I ship it. So going into this, I definitely knew that Domon and Honami were going to be a thing because of what happens in the Timeranger Gokaiger tribute episode. So I was definitely expecting the development to happen. I didn't know that they would make it such a central part of Domon's character and really spread it throughout the season. And just to give a little bit of context, it was a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a misidentity because Honami thought Ayase, who is Time Blue, was Time Yellow. But then, hilarity ensues and, their relationship, progresses over time, and it was a fun, cute story. And Tatsuya and Yuri was also really cute. Yeah, Yuri is one of the stronger female Super Sentai Rangers that I've noticed. And, their dynamic is cute and, kind of a classic. She's kind of a tough person who's scared to be vulnerable, but then she kind of slowly becomes vulnerable with Tatsuya over time. And, I'll get into it more later, but, for some reason I didn't think that Time Force, or Power Rangers Time Force, adapted that part of it, but they did do a few small things that, made it a little bit different enough. I like the development of the Monders, or the villain group. I like their development because it didn't feel like the usual past Super Sentai villain groups. It didn't feel like a force of nature or something that's trying to take over and change the world. They were just trying to, it was just rooted in money and crime, which makes sense because the Time Rangers are part of a type of police department, the Time Protection Department. I kind of like that there's kind of a personal story to it because, they're just kind of like a crime family. Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it, like a crime family. So it's, two sides, one's chasing after the other, and then, there's some turmoil in that crime family that leads to the eventual end of that group. And something that did throw me off was Lila, who is the Nadira equivalent from Power Rangers Time Force. She just straight up left at the end. Yeah, just went into hiding, I guess. Right into the things that kind of threw me off. There was actually an episode that really, really threw me off. And it was just the premise of it and what was allowed. And that episode is where I think it's a monster who can make people drunk. Like alcohol drunk. And, since this is Japan, let's just say they can hold their liquor really well. And, really flush, really crazy, not what you'd expect. Especially from, Super Sentai Rangers who are supposed to be heroes. So, being a kid, I can only imagine, like, I guess it's kind of humanizing that can happen. I mean, again, it's because it's a monster, but it definitely threw me off in that they would not allow this here in the U.S. or I don't know about other Western countries, but they would definitely not allow that in the U.S. if this is supposed to be considered a quote-unquote kid show. So that episode really threw me off. I thought it was funny, but, it did shock me. Okay, I just looked it up real quick. It's not so much that monster's power as it is distributing something that was illegal in the 30th century, where most of the Timerangers are from, that is capable of intoxicating humans instantly, very strongly, for a long period of time, but aliens are immune to it. So, just a little clarification. But still, that was shocking. Either way. So I think the biggest thing that threw me off is just how closely adapted Power Rangers Time Force was to Timeranger. So it felt really, really familiar. I mean, I know I've kind of, I guess, geeked out or reminisced when it came to the Psycho Rangers or the Ninja Ranger equivalent in Mega Ranger, or the Black Knight and Magna Defender arc in Ginga Man, or the Lightspeed Rescue and Go-Go 5 in general. But each thing had its own different setting that differentiated it enough where it didn't feel too familiar. It felt different. For Mega Ranger, they were all high school students and actually focused on that high school experience, whereas in Power Rangers in space, it was still somewhat connected to the original Power Rangers arc because of Zordon. Ginga Man versus Lost Galaxy, they were all members of that tribe or ancient civilization, whereas for Lost Galaxy it was just the one. I think it was Yellow. And then everyone else was just someone who happened to be worthy enough to pull the swords out of the stone. Whereas in Ginga Man, they were all pretty much meant to pull the sword from the stone. With Go-Go 5, everyone was related. They were all siblings. And then, you bring that family dynamic in, and that was way more than enough to make it completely different from Lightspeed Rescue. The thing about Power Rangers Time Force is they pulled a lot from Timeranger. I'm not saying in a bad way. It felt really familiar. I mean, they incorporated the romantic relationship between Red and Pink. Blue was into cars. Green was an alien, and both, I think. Yellow, in Time Force, Yellow was actually a girl. The relationship between Time Fire, or the Quantum Ranger, and the Red Ranger was also pretty similar. They went to the same prep school, but Time Fire / Quantum Ranger just felt like they didn't belong, and they even had the Silver Guardians, private security incorporated into both of them. They did do enough where it was different enough. It just, for some reason, the combination of all those aspects made it feel like a much closer adaptation than the previous seasons that I noticed. For instance, the Pink Ranger's vendetta against the villain in Power Rangers Time Force was motivated because the villain, Rancic, killed her fiance, who was the future Time Red. Whereas in Time Ranger, her family was killed by the main villain in Timeranger on a completely separate occasion. So she ended up joining the Time Protection Department to eventually catch and arrest him. In Power Rangers Time Force, Rancic is taken in by Frax, who was previously a professor who was really into robots and eventually turned himself into one, and then Nadira is his daughter. Whereas in Timeranger, Dawn, which in Timeranger, well, first of all, Dawn isn't some half human, half mutant thing. He's just a mutant. And Lila is not his daughter. Maybe adopted daughter, but not like his actual daughter. They're not even the same species. And then Gen, who is the Frax equivalent, I think kind of took in Dawn when he was trying to escape from the police, but then Gen was like a homeless, like I think like a kid, and who eventually turned himself into a robot. So he was never smart. He wasn't obsessed with trying to become a robot, and that's how he went nuts in the Power Rangers Time Force equivalent. But in Timeranger, I think I'm actually don't remember, but they went nuts for different reasons. I think one was I think in Power Rangers Time Force, Frax was thinking for himself, and he was getting fed up and wanted to take matters into his own hands, and that's why he had a plan to destroy the world or whatever. With Timeranger, I can't remember exactly what happened, but he eventually went nuts. Like there was a noticeable descent. Oh, and how can I forget the big thing that Timeranger did that Power Rangers Time Force did not is, spoiler alert, they killed Timefire. That was, wow. As cool and badass as I think Timefire was, it did take some time to warm up to him. Trying to look back on his character, I think that he, even though he was on the same side as the Time Rangers, but playing for a different team through a different angle, he embodied the same values that they had, and able to kind of live for themselves. Or let me see if I can phrase that better. Maybe the translation was rough, but I got the message was kind of something along the lines of, grasp your future, live for yourself kind of a deal. And Naoto, despite, his differences with the Time Rangers, was trying to do that and live by that. Kind of speaking of the values of the Time Ranger series, I guess just on to my favorite episode. And my favorite episode, or I guess case file as they call it, was case file 20, The Renewed Bond. I think something to understand is this was the end of a 3-part episode arc, and to give a bit of context, Domo in Time Yellow really loves where he comes from, the 30th century, and there were a few episodes that kind of cover his struggle with having to live in the 21st century, and and it really kind of comes to a T in this episode, because he loses his will to fight. They're obviously, because they're up against some really really strong, like, elite group of monsters. And, he realizes that, I forget how or why, but, him and the other Timeranger realize that the changes they make in the past may change what happens in their future. And Domon is someone who is homesick and really likes, where he comes from. He's not sure he wants to change that. And all the other Timerangers also realize that. I forget where he is at his relationship at this point with Hanami, but I think, and he's kind of, I think it is where it is, where, he's still having fun, kind of playing the mysterious hero, and she's still attracted to him, and, the potential for it to become something real. If it is at that point, then, then that's something that he ends up struggling with. And you actually see it a little bit when, they actually do meet and they know each other, and he has to go back and all that stuff. But the thing about this episode is that there's actually a pretty inspiring scene. And, they find the monster. They kind of have to retreat to regather themselves. Not as bad as when I was talking about it for the Go-Go 5 episode. But, he kind of vents his frustration that whatever changes they make in this century are going to affect the changes that are going to happen in their future or their home. And when all the Rangers realize this, they're a little bit conflicted as well. But eventually, they all realize, a monster is attacking the city. People are getting hurt. And they realize, things are going to change, but they can't just do nothing. So, one by one, they morph and they run off. And they kind of, say what they're inspired by, or, they say one of their goals. Like Ayase, Time Blue, says that, he's the one who says, we can't just stand by and do nothing. Morphs, runs off. Time Pink says she is still determined to catch the Launders and, avenge her family. Morphs, runs off. I think Xion, Time Green, just as he likes fighting with them, because they're like his family. Morphs, runs off. And then, Red and Yellow, who are usually at odds and still are, they have a heart-to-heart. And, Red kind of trying to remind Domon of, he has stuff to fight for, before he morphs and runs off. And then Domon eventually gets around to morphing and joining the team. It's a lot more inspiring than I'm describing it, but when I was watching it, it was a pretty inspiring scene. So, Domon losing his will to fight and kind of finding a reason to fight again. Apparently according to this wiki, the catchphrase or tagline of Timeranger is to grasp the infinite future, or at least that's what the English translation is. And there's a quote from, I think, it might have been the second episode, but so the translation from the Shout Factory DVD says something along the lines of, if you can't change your future, then you can at least change your tomorrow. And, that's kind of going along with the grasp your future. And, as someone who has struggled with finding his will to live and the will to fight, these were some pretty inspiring lines. So that scene was able to, remind me to reflect and think about why I even have a will to live and fight and stuff like that. So that episode hit a little close to home, especially where I was at that time.